Hi, Amber. I was praying for you the other night. You know, one of the things I always do is I thank God for all the blessings that He's given me in my life. And it's funny how God will show me blessings and show me things, you know, as I'm laying there that I haven't thought about for years or whatever, you know, good things and bad things, you know, things that I did that I'm not happy with or proud of. And so the other night while I was doing that, I was thinking back about when I was a youngster, and I was thinking about and thanking God for leading me to Him, because that's a whole story in itself. I ended up going to a private Adventist school, and the only reason I ended up going there was because when my brother John got sent, they had gone on a camping outing. And back then that was kind of unusual for, you know, schools to do so much. So I thought, wow, that's kind of neat. I'd like to go to school where you have people and you go on camping outings and stuff like that. And, you know, so I mentioned it to my mom, and against the wishes of my dad, my mom made it so that I could go to school there, because, you know, it costs money and you have to pay to go to a private school. And so she made sure I had, or she made sure that that was taken care of. And so off I went. Well, after a number of months, a friend of mine that I'd made at school told me about some meetings that they were having at school, and I had no idea what he was talking about. So he said, oh, you got to go because you can get a free Bible and you get free stuff here and there if you go to a number of meetings. And so, well, you know, I was a kid, and you know, free things back then were kind of cool. So I thought, well, I'm going to go. I want to get a free Bible. Not that I knew much about the Bible. So I ended up going to one meeting, and then two meetings, and then probably ended up going to, because they had one a night, you know, a couple of nights a week, and then it went for about a month. And so, well, maybe 20 meetings. No, it had to be more than that, because some of the gifts they gave you, you had to go to a certain number of meetings. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I learned a lot. I learned about Jesus, about God. I learned about salvation, grace. I learned about the second coming. I'd never even heard of that one. And so I learned a lot of different things. And so I went ahead and I had started going to church as a result of that, a Seventh-day Adventist church in my city. And I decided after a while that I'd like to get baptized. And so that led to my baptism. And so what a blessing to, for some stupid reason, end up wanting to go to some school that I had no idea what it was about, to be truthful. But I ended up going there, and it ended up changing my entire life to what it is or has been, and to what my religious beliefs are then and now. And just a fantastic thing that took place, an incredible blessing in my life that, you know, who would have ever expected such a thing to happen? Some kid ends up going to some school, knows nothing about, and ends up finding out about Jesus and God. Continuing my story, you know, they were a set of meetings. You know, they were an evangelistic series that they were running at the school itself. I had a really nice auditorium at my school. And so after a number of weeks and so forth, and I started going to church regularly with some of the other guys that had become friends. And so after about a month or so, I decided that I wanted to get baptized. And so I was baptized, and it was a exciting experience, an exciting time, to give your life to the Lord, and for me to have found a truth that I had never known before. And it was just life altering. And of course, I'm in like 7th grade. You got to remember that one. And so as time goes by, and I'm not saying I was a righteous person in my childhood, but I believed, and I believed that I needed to follow certain of the commandments that God glorify Him, or would help me to have a better relationship with Jesus Christ, with God. So God had shown me this a long time ago, that was a blessing, and so that wasn't what came about the other night in my prayer. I was thanking God for that He had led me, because had I not gone to that school, had I not gone to those meetings and had a friend that's, hey, why don't you come get a free Bible? Had I not gone through all of that, who knows? Because it truly changed the whole direction of my life. And that's an important part of my life, an important milestone in my life, because, like I said, it changed everything. So as I was praying the other night, and I was thanking God for all the blessings and the things that He had done for me, I started thinking about my mom. And I started thinking about the fact that she had gotten baptized after I had. She wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist. We had gone to Methodist churches and Presbyterian churches and things like that. For me, it really didn't mean much of anything. It was like, yeah, I go to church, and so, okay. I knew some Bible stories, not very well. But what had happened is that I think it was during my 8th grade year, she started going to meetings at another church that was in our area. There were a number of churches in our area, Adventist churches, Seventh-day Adventist churches. And she started going to meetings. And she had asked me if I wanted to go, but, I didn't, because I was a teenager and I didn't want to go with my mom, because, that's the way teenagers are. And so she was going to meetings, and she would talk about them sometimes as we were driving. She was taking me to school or whatever it might have been, and we would discuss them some and talk. She would tell me things she had learned and things that they had done, and it was all interesting, and that was great. And I didn't even think about the fact that my mom wasn't baptized and that she might want to be baptized. I mean, just never crossed my mind. So during this time when she was going to these meetings, she started going to that church on Sabbaths, Saturdays. And so she would take me and drop me off a little bit early at my church, which was okay with me. And then she would drive across town to the next town to where, and that was close. It was like 6 miles, 5 miles. And back then you could cover 5 miles pretty fast. Today you couldn't. But she would drop me off, and then she'd go over to that church for Sabbath school and church, and then I would hang around afterwards, and she'd come and pick me up. So I happened to be sitting in church one day. This was, I would go to Sabbath school, which was like Sunday school, and then I would go into the church and, sit in church and go through the worship service. Sometimes I would sit with friends if they were there, and other times I'd just sit by myself. And so I'm sitting in church this one Sabbath day, and the church is just, getting ready to get started. They're doing announcements, and then they do their opening singing song, and someone comes and sits beside me, and I turn to look, and oh my gosh, it's my PE teacher from my school that I go to. His name was Mr. Yaw. And so I look at him and said hi, and he says, you should come with me. And it's like, oh, why should I come with you? And, I just, being the somewhat obedient, trusting person that I was as a child, I said, oh, okay. I didn't know if something was wrong with my mom or what was up, because, he said, oh, you should come with me. So we go out and get in his car, and he starts driving me, and kind of asked him where we were going, and he said, oh, we're going to go over to the Garden Grove Church, and I said, is something wrong? He said, oh, no, nothing's wrong, but you won't want to miss what is happening. And so I said, well, what's happening? And he said, well, your mom's going to be baptized today. And so that was like, she is? She didn't tell me anything. And he said, I thought that you would like to be there, and I know that she would like you to be there. And so even though she didn't say anything, I came and got you because I could tell. And so we got back to the church where she was going to be baptized, and I went in, and I sat with him because, he walked me in, and we sat with his family. And of course they ask, there are people there that would want to stand, for this person and show their commitment to help them to live their life for Christ. So I stood, and he stood, and his wife stood, and so I saw my mom get baptized, and I wouldn't have had this teacher of mine not come and gotten me from another church across town. And so as I'm counting blessings, this pops in my head. Now, it was a blessing that my mom was baptized, but it was none of my doing. The blessing was that someone had gone out of their way to make sure that I was there to see her baptized and to support her in her decision for that. That was the blessing, that I got to be there. The blessing that someone would actually do that was just, it's amazing. I think back now, and it's like, wow. There aren't very many people that would go out of their way and do that. So that was an amazing thing. It popped in my head, and I hadn't thought about that for eons. So there's another blessing that I could thank God for. And it was amazing just how clear it all popped into my head, and how I'd like to thank Mr. Yaw for that, and I will, because he's still alive. He's getting older, but he's still around, so I need to make sure that I thank him for the fact that he was part of the blessing that I could have and receive for that. So I do thank him, and it was amazing. And it was, just, again, an act of God working in my life, working in my family's life. Well, my dad wasn't an Adventist either, obviously, and, I don't know that when she got baptized, he wasn't interested, he wasn't there. I don't think he even knew it. I don't think he found out until a lot of years later when he actually decided that he wanted to get baptized, that she was baptized. And he was, I think, kind of shocked because he didn't know it. But sure enough, a number of years later, 13, probably about 7 years later, I guess, my dad got interested in religion, and he started reading and studying about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, what they believe, and their doctrines, and he got converted, basically, to Jesus Christ at that time. Now, he had known about Jesus and he had known about God, but, there are certain things that the Seventh-day Adventist Church looks at, one being the Sabbath. There's a number of other things that may be different from what other churches might look at, but there's a lot of churches that have similar doctrines. So the Sabbath is a big one. The health food thing, where you eat healthier, is another big one. Of course, I didn't follow that one very well. So, like I said, a number of years later, he became interested and was converted and gave his life to God and to Jesus, because he came to believe in the message that he received. And over the next decade or even longer, he started teaching Sabbath schools. He gave several sermons later on, and he helped out with some of the church organization that runs all of the churches. He helped with a number of things. He actually went to where I went to college and helped them to develop their program to become a standalone university separate from Loma Linda University, to develop the programs and what they would need to do, because he had done a lot of that while he had been a college professor in his life. He had helped to set up programs, and so he went and he helped out with that. And I wish I'd have paid more attention at that time and learned more about what he was doing, but I had little kids at the time, and I kind of tuned out what my parents were doing. And I feel bad because I would have liked to have known more about where he was and what he was doing, and my mom and what she was doing. I know a lot of what she did because I would hear from her and she would tell me. So there was that. My dad, he didn't share as much, and so I didn't hear as much. But that's the story that came from a thought of thanking God for my blessings and having a another blessing pop into my head and be shown to me incredibly, because like I said, it was just one of those things that I hadn't thought about for a long time, and there it was. So that's my story of blessings being shown to me that have happened in my life, and there have been a lot. That's just one, in one little instance, but you can see other ones that are connected to it. The blessing of my mom being baptized, the blessing of my dad being baptized, the blessing that my children were baptized, the blessing that I was baptized, the blessing that I met a Seventh-day Adventist girl that I fell in love with and married and had children. The blessing that God led in my life, even though I wouldn't follow some of what he led, and my life would have been so much better had I, because that's the way life is. God shows us things and God directs us, but if we don't follow those things, then a lot of times we miss out on even more blessings. So I thank God for that. And I wanted to share that story with you because it was one of those times when I was praying for you. And like I said, I like to thank God for the blessings that he gives me. And I think that's an important thing because we need to acknowledge God and what God has done for us. And of course, you can't acknowledge everything every single time, but I like to acknowledge some of the things that he's done for me. So that was my message today to you. And I know it was long and drawn out, but for me, it was a good message. So I love you, and I'll chat with you later. Bye-bye now.